Hello, hello. Welcome to the Thrive Show. Thanks for
Hey,
coming.
how are you?
Doing great. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing
Good.
well. And you?
Good. Yes. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Dr. Sue Collins. Again, always nice to see you, nice to connect with you, nice to talk to you. We've known each other for a little while. So it's a blessing to be able to have you on my first show. Thank you for
I'm
being
ex-
with us.
Thank you for
And
inviting me. I'm excited. I'm excited to be here.
yeah. So before anything, we know that you're a mind mastery architect, but I did want to talk a little bit about your past and your history since it's quite extraordinary. And no, but and please, y'all don't hold your breath because it's quite a long bio, but it's just amazing. So I had to share with you guys. Um, Dr. Sue's been a trailblazer on many fronts, to say the least. In 1969, she was one of the first African American students to attend Florida State University, where she subsequently received 3 degrees, including a law degree and a PhD. While attending FSU College of Law, she was the first African American student invited to serve on the prestigious law review. Dr. Sue also holds a master's degree from Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, where she broke 2 barriers by being one of the first women and one of the first African Americans to complete her degree there. Most recently, in 2017, Dr. Sue received a bachelor's degree from Metaphysics University of Metaphysics, and was ordained as a metaphysical minister, licensed by the Worldwide International Metaphysics Ministry. Um, but besides that, you also have been kind of a change maker. Um, uh, in social change, basically amassing more than 40 years experience as a criminal justice practitioner, lawyer, and university professor. Um, you obtained a PhD in 2000, became an assistant professor at Georgia State University in 2001, retired emeritus associate professor in 2015, um, spoken before national audiences, developed and presented a variety of police leadership seminars on sexual harassment, racial profiling, managing diversity, and communications, which is really important in that profession. Just fantastic work. But now, um, tell us a little bit more about what you do now. We know that you're a mindset mastery architect, and you love helping people out, and that's what you've dedicated your life to now, which is superb. So tell us a little bit more about what you do in regards to mindset architect.
When I left the university, well, even in anticipating leaving the university, I left Georgia State in 2015. But in 2014, I decided that I wanted a kinder, gentler life. I wanted to be able to connect with people wherever they were, regardless of their circumstances, and to leave them in a space that was more peaceful and harmonious with life than they were before they connected with me. I'm a very spiritual person. I believe in God, and so that's the way I refer to the Creator. And so I remember having a conversation with God saying, um, God asked me, "What would you ask of me?" And I said, "Give me the wisdom of Solomon and make me the embodiment of peace." And that, oh, got some chills here.
Uh, yeah,
That
love
is
that.
what that's what I have since spent my life trying to do. Um, my story, you read the credentials, and as you were reading those, I was thinking, wow, that person is wow. And I'm sure that many of your audiences will be thinking similar thoughts. What a high achiever, all of those accolades and accomplishments.
Mhm.
But as I said to you, there's a story behind the story, behind the external story, and that is that you have to understand why it was that I got the degrees. And it
Right.
wasn't because I wanted them because of what they represented. It was because within me, I didn't feel good enough. within me, I had such a sense of insecurity and inadequacy growing up as a Black girl in the deep, deep South, growing up during the age of segregation when brown skin and big lips were not prized. They were, that you wanted to be anything but that. So when I looked in the mirror, I think I look kind of cute now, y'all. I'm just saying.
Yep.
But
That's right.
but at the point when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see anything about me that was appealing. Like
Yeah.
keep in mind the poster child, so to speak, of beauty in America is a thin white female with blonde hair and blue eyes.
At the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So there is nothing about me that looks like that. And so, given that that was representative of beauty, I'm never going to be that. And I felt internally, I didn't know as a child, you don't know why you don't feel good enough. You just kind of hold yourself back, you make yourself small when you're around other people. And we grew up, I was very poor, and my father went to prison. So my history is deep in terms of not having, certainly not being representative of middle class America because we were anything but that. And so my father went to prison for murder, and we were the kids who my mom had was left with 10 children.
Hmm.
We were those Carter kids whose dad went to prison and whose mama had a house full of children.
Right.
And we were never going to be anything. We were never going to be anything according to popular opinion. And so all of that is internalized, as you know, when the research indicates that those first 7 years of a child's life are so critical. That's when the imprinting occurs with regard to the values, the beliefs, the stories that you are telling yourself, and the stories that other people are telling you about you. When I think of mind
Hmm.
mastery, I think of the mind, I think of the subconscious mind as being like Teflon. Everything that it comes into contact with sticks there. And so all
Mm.
of those stories were buried so deep, but those were the stories that I lived my life by.
Right.
Except here's the thing. I didn't realize that they were operating at the subconscious level, and I was not conscious of them. I just knew that from a quality of life standpoint and from a living consciously, achieving your highest potential, I knew that I was smart. Sometimes I knew I was smart. A lot of the times I thought I didn't know enough. I was never going to be good enough. And so from that standpoint, I spent my whole life trying
Mm.
to be good enough by somebody else's standards.
Yes. Yes. Definitely. Wow. So I was thinking it's also like an iron skillet. Um, but once you clean it, when you put salt on it, all the flavors come out. And it's really an advantage at that point. Yeah, yeah. So you've turned things around and you've transmuted all of that into being an advantage. So
I, I
I
want
mhm. Go ahead. Yeah, yeah,
want
go ahead.
you to
Mhm.
understand, I want you to understand that number one, it wasn't an overnight thing. And number two, it hasn't been that long ago because for me, relatively speaking, when I think of it, I spent a lifetime trying to get to be this girl that I am now. But it was
Mhm.
really only in 2012, I found myself at rock bottom as an alcoholic, suicidal, not wanting to live, and really saying to God, and what I view in retrospect, very threatening voice, I said to God, you got to prove to me it's worth living. You got to,
Yeah.
if this is the life that I'm going to have, I will take
Mhm.
my life before I will allow myself to go out like this.
Right.
And that was
Yes.
the night before the day that I went into AA in 2012, July 18th,
Wow.
2012.
Wow.
And so
Yeah.
that began the
Hmm.
long climb up
Yes.
out of the darkness. And it required me to really go deep inside to connect with myself, going back to the childhood stuff, going back. I had no memories. That's another
Mhm.
thing that happens sometimes, that you suppress the memories. All I knew is at this point, I was in a state of pain.
Right.
Anybody looking at me from the outside in would say, oh, you've got it all. You've got the Jaguar, you've got a second car,
Yeah.
you've got the nice house, 3,000.
Lawyer.
square foot, you're a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
you are an associate professor, you got it going on. You dress nicely. There is nothing
Exactly.
about you. Like my mama used to say, just because you are poor does not mean that you have to look that way. And
That's right.
there's a saying now that says, I don't have, I don't look like what I've been through. And
Right.
so I don't look like what I've been through, but I like to
Right.
tell the story because I want people to understand that your yesterday does not dictate your right now or your tomorrow, and you get to choose. This is where the mind
Mm.
mastery comes in, that at every moment you are at decision point. Every moment you
Every
can make
moment.
to be your greatest self, and that really is what we are all here to do. That's what it's all
Mhm.
about.
Just like that. Yeah. I do, and I'm glad that you brought up your childhood and your mother and your nine siblings, right?
Yeah,
10 of you all together, and your mother being so strong and being able to put all that together and send all you guys to school
yeah.
and instill all of that in you. So tell me a little bit more about her strength and about how she has impacted your life.
Yeah, girl children can be difficult. And I didn't
Mhm.
realize how difficult I must have been as I was growing up. There were nine boys, right? And so the boys had freedom. This is an era where boys could do what they wanted to do, but girls, you had to hold on them to them tightly. And I
Nine
realized
boys. Wow. Okay.
eight
Yeah,
boys, I'm sorry, eight boys. We had a little
yeah.
football team going on.
Okay.
But they had so much freedom, and I
Yeah.
felt I had so little.
Yeah.
But my sister had gotten pregnant at age 14, and so I was the baby. My sister was grown and gone when I was coming along, and so my mama held on to me tight. But
Hmm.
this is her legacy to all of us was a love of education. If you
Yeah.
can look behind me, you see books. I have books everywhere,
Everyone.
everywhere. I sometimes joke, not so much, that I love books more than I love people. But what you can learn and what you can share.
Yeah.
Because even as I am learning for myself, I am always sharing it with other people. And that's what my mom gave us, the desire to get educated. And she would say, get as much as you can, because that's
Mm.
something that nobody can ever take away from you. But she also said, be good and do good. And she would
Mhm.
say to me, you're going to be a teacher. And I would say, no, anything but. I am not going to be a teacher. I'm not going to be a teacher. In retrospect, I realized I've been teaching all my life,
Right. Right.
and I
Yeah.
finally love it. But it was a process.
That's right. That's funny. Yeah, I got my degree in Spanish, right? And so everybody's like, "Oh, you're gonna be a teacher. You're gonna be a Spanish teacher." Da, 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 this, that. I was like, I do not want to be a teacher. That's the last thing I want to be as a teacher. So my dad got me this book, The Best Careers for Foreign Language Majors. And so I was like, all right, I can be an interpreter, translator. That sounds good. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm ending up going the teacher route kind of in different ways too. So yeah, I mean, it happens. That's great. Okay. So yeah, I do want to know a little bit more about mind mastery architect and what you do for your clients. Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about the process and what it entails?
So I believe that every person, if they have the knowledge of how to do it, every person has the ability to recreate themselves. And you do so by focusing on what's going on in the mind, right? I can remember, just as an aside, a little story to say how I got here. uh, I had a group of friends, and there were six of us. Once a week, we six women, very well educated, highly educated women. Once a week, we would meet at one of our houses, just to support each other because we were all entrepreneurs as well.
Mhm.
And what I began to notice is that every time we met, the conversation, we spent a lot of time talking about the same thing.
Mhm.
And it was the sense of inadequacy, insecurity. We weren't calling it that. We were simply talking about what we were afraid of and how we wanted to do certain things, but we couldn't do these things.
Mhm.
And one of the things that drove me out of academia is that I began to feel that I wasn't enough because I didn't have I'm not a statistician. I don't do numbers, right? I'm a
Right. Yeah.
qualitative researcher,
Yeah.
qualitative socio-legal researcher, but
Hmm.
that's low person on the totem pole in academia. Academia is all about quantitative research. And
Right.
so I began to feel not good enough in that position. And what I noticed is in my weekly meeting with my friends, we were all coming from that place. And one day,
Mm.
beautiful summer day, probably about this time of the year. And I said, I am sick of this. I'm sick of it. I don't know what it is. I am not going to stop until I figure this shit out.
Right.
I'm going to figure it out. And from that, I went, at that point, I had left the university.
Really briefly, what were you going to figure out?
I wanted to understand why it is that these highly accomplished women, myself included, at that point I had 4 degrees and a gazillion accolades.
Right.
And I was in a meeting in a group with a chiropractor, an experienced chiropractor, an
Hmm.
accountant, a person who had owned her business for multiple years, and well, 2 women, and all of us had in common that we were healers, Reiki masters and yogis, and so
Hmm.
we were all accomplished, but we
Right.
were all coming from that place that there was something holding us back and we didn't know what it was. And
Right.
for me, it's like an opportunity. I just had an insight that all of my life I had been coming from that place
Mm.
that I knew that I could do more, but I was keeping myself tight. I was holding myself not I was afraid. I was
Right.
afraid. And then there reached a point where even at the university, a situation that I no longer wanted to be in, but I was afraid to go to a different university because by now I had internalized the belief that no other university would hire me.
Right. Right.
So
Mm.
I went off in search. I mean, I dug deep into the research, the psychology of it, what's going on with the brain, why every place that I could look.
After all those degrees, after all that
Yeah,
experience, why?
yeah, because
Right.
it didn't make sense to me.
Right.
And I came upon this research, and I can't remember who the researchers were, but they had written an article on but they had done research and written an article on the imposter syndrome. And I thought, that's it. That is exactly what it is, right? And so I went back. I was so excited. Ooh, 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 I found the answer. I found the answer. And I went back and I told the other women, they weren't excited. What's wrong with them? Not excited. So excited. But for me, it was a turning point. And here's what you have to be aware of, what I later became aware of. That label, the imposter syndrome, now that I knew what was quote unquote wrong with me, I grabbed that label, put it on like a heavy coat, and held on to it. Now I became the thing I became the thing that the label said I was, right? Because I had a name for it and it gave me a sense of security. But now there was like an underlying justification as to, oh, well, you can't do this because you're an imposter. You can't do this because of the imposter syndrome. And just for the audience, research indicates that 90+% of the people in the world, more than 90% of the people experience imposter syndrome at some point, including Michelle Obama, including Einstein,
Yeah.
including the first man to walk on the moon. It's a human issue, trait, rather than something that is unique to any individual. But now that I knew that, that was around the time that I began to write my book. And I talked just a little bit in my book, Return to Self. I didn't spend a lot of time on it, but I
Right.
talked just a little bit about the labels that we take on and that we internalize.
Right.
And so I was in that space for a little while, a long,
Hmm. Yeah.
until I realized, oh, well, it's the same thing. You now are justifying why you still are not reaching your fullest potential by
Right.
saying that it's the imposter syndrome. So it's the same thing. It's mutated, but it hasn't changed.
Right.
Just the label.
Right.
And so with that, I thought I got to go deeper. I got to go deeper because there's something else going on here. And
Mm.
that's when I began to explore a little bit about quantum physics, but a lot about how does the brain work.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
with the subconscious mind. And that's right now, I am passionate about learning more about the subconscious mind. And I tell you, I just want to tell everybody. I want to tell everybody because
Hmm.
we think that we're conscious, but the research indicates that we're only conscious 5% of the time. That the
Right.
subconscious mind is ruling us, controlling our behavior 95 and our thoughts 95% of the time. And
Right.
many times, what I ask my clients, for instance, when a client is working with me, one of the first things I want to know is, well, first explain to me or describe what your concern is. And after they put it out, then I want to talk, well, let's go back to your childhood. When was the first time you began to feel this way? So we do a
Hmm.
and I said, go back. We go back and look at it. And honestly, in 9 out of 10 of the clients that I work with, they will tell me that something happened between the time that they were 1 and 5 years old.
Right.
Dramatic happened, whether somebody yelled at them and said, shut up and sit down, whether somebody says you can't dance, whether somebody says you're ugly, whether somebody said, like they used to call me nappy hair. My hair was down here, but my mom was, she was a wonderful woman, but she had no sense of style. I'm just saying. So style was very limited. A plait
Yeah.
on each side, one here and two down the back. And it's like all the other girls had the little puffs and pom pom. My mama did not play that. She was not putting any rubber bands on my hair. She wasn't doing the pom pom thing. So as compared to the other little girls, I didn't feel cute. I
Right.
didn't feel cute because the skin color. I didn't feel cute. I had a gap in my teeth long before Michael Strahan made them popular. So I just didn't feel cute, right?
Mm.
With my clients, I want to explore. Talk to me about your childhood. Talk to me about your family. Talk to me about your relationship with your mom, with your dad, with your siblings. Let's
Hmm.
talk about it so that we can begin to identify what is going on. And I'm listening to you, but I'm looking for underlying issues.
Hmm.
So often, as I said, it's at the subconscious level. Then I say, okay, let's dream. Most of us have forgotten how to dream.
Right.
You could dream. Go back to when you were a child and you had dreams. So, what did you want to do? Who did you want to be? Interesting thing, as children, we're told we can be anything. You can be a fireman, a garbage man, a doctor, a lawyer, a janitor, a nurse. You can be all of that at the same time.
Right.
And early on, people are saying, oh, that's so cute. That's so cute. Isn't that cute? Oh, he wants to do this. She wants to do that. But pretty soon they begin to herd us into a single lane. Well, you can't
Hmm.
do that. What makes you think you can do that? Well,
Yeah.
you can do this, but that's we only have lawyers in our family. We only have, like my mom told me, teacher, you're going to be a teacher. Where did that come from? At that point in my life, in the African American community, you could be a teacher, a nurse, a lawyer, or a doctor.
Right.
That's who those were the options, right? And so the family begins to program you as to who you can be and what you can be. And then you
Right.
have society that's doing it. And you've got the religious institutions, the school, the educational institutions, the governments. Everybody is attached, giving you a label and herding you into a single lane. You
That's right.
can't do this because all that's being imprinted on the subconscious mind. And so I say, if there were no limitations, if you could have absolutely anything you wanted, if
Hmm.
money was no concern, if color was no concern, if gender was no concern, if none of that was a concern, who would you be? Where would you be? How would you be? Remember when you were a kid and you didn't have any of those restrictions? Dream and dream big. So
Hmm.
now we have two polar opposites. We have the childhood, which was not what you wanted it to be, and we have the dream. In between the two, that's
Hmm.
where we work. I call that the transformation gap. In
Right.
there, we're going to juxtapose those two because I have you write your old story, now write your new story. And we put
Hmm.
it side by side. And now we'll begin to look at what are the barriers that are holding you back from achieving your greatness.
Hmm.
What are the stories? Like yesterday, I'm doing Instagram lives almost every day. And I did one either yesterday or the day before where I was talking about what is the internal narrative that you're telling yourself. That is it expansive? Is it opening you up to the world, options, opportunities, experiences, or is it restrictive? Is it saying you can't and making you small?
Right.
What is the story, or what are the stories? And so we look at those stories and then we began to dismantle it,
Hmm.
because this is where think your thoughts are real. This gets back to the energy. This is how my healing work is coming into play now. We get back to the energy. Tesla
Thoughts are
said,
real.
you want to
Hmm.
understand the universe, you got to focus on energy.
And
Einstein,
I think that's great that you talk about imagination, because imagination is creation.
yes.
Imagination
Yes.
is creation. Thoughts turn into action, turn into real things. What were you going to say about Einstein?
I was saying Tesla said that energy is the key, and
Yeah.
Einstein said Tesla is smarter than I am. So what can I say, right? So, but they both understood what energy was and what vibration and resonance, and we create it all right here. We create
Yeah.
it all in the mind, and that's why I get so excited and I want to tell people about the subconscious mind, because you're always creating. I
Yeah.
remember the first time someone said to me, "You create your own reality." I said,
Right.
"Bullshit, I didn't create this. I would never create this."
Hmm.
But we do. We're creating whether we are consciously creating or we're creating whether we are unconsciously creating. And unfortunately, for most of the world exists in a state of unconsciousness. And so the work that I do, I want to make the invisible visible and the unconscious conscious. And that's where the mind mastery comes in, because I need you to understand you can do this. You can do it. It begins right here.
That's great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about conscious living and healthy living, and how, there's mind, body, soul, spirit. Um, you eat something and you feel a specific way, and you can eat healthier and then you may feel better. You drink something, you can either do detriment to your health or you can improve your health. So what about ingesting information? What about ingesting, like how does that uh, uh,
It's,
you know how does that relate to conscious living, um,
everything is
when it
energy.
comes to your work? Yeah, yeah. Hmm.
Everything goes back to energy. What you think is energy, and the science. See, this is why I'm loving the quantum science. I'm not deep into it, just deep enough to be able to explain it, right?
Completely.
What the science shows is that when you think a certain thing, it creates something physical in your brain.
Yeah.
Not only that, it releases chemicals. And those chemicals then determine how you feel. And what you're feeling is simply energy in motion. And it is energy in motion that is derived from what you tell yourself.
Mhm.
I use the example, for instance, we live in a society here in America where it like death is not, we know that we're dying, but we
Mhm.
don't want to acknowledge it. And we see it as a sad thing. But
Right.
there are societies that see it as a beautiful thing, and they honor the dead, and they are uplifted. If you went from our society where people boohoo cry and just, oh my God, it's how horrible, to the society where how beautiful it is that you've transitioned to the next level, it's like it's all about how where you are dictates many times what you think. And when you understand that your thoughts control everything, man, it controls your joy,
Hmm.
it controls your sadness. That's power. That gives you power.
Hmm.
um in the Bible, not to whether you're Christian or not, this is just an example, because I think the Bible, a lot of it is just stories to help you have better, more conscious living. But in the Bible, it says that Jesus performed miracles, but it also said that he said, greater things than these you'll do if you only believe. So,
Right.
what you believe really determines whether you are able to tap into your higher potential, tap into your highest capacity. It is true, and I can't remember who it is that said it, but if you believe that you're going to fail, then you will fail. But if you believe you're going to succeed, then you will succeed. This
Mhm.
goes to, again, do you have a fixed mindset or do you have a growth mindset? Those people who have growth mindset, well, let me back it up a little bit. I had a fixed mindset with regard to who I was most of my life.
Right.
And then when I went on that search to figure out what is causing it, I
Mhm.
shifted into a growth
Growth.
mindset. And from
Mhm.
there, it's like, wow, it opened up the whole world. I'm so
Mhm.
excited to be alive. I'm so excited because I get to tell people you too have the capacity to experience freedom. But it
Right.
begins right here, right here.
Right.
This is what the conscious living begins right here.
Right. Right.
So,
I heard.
so many of us, Anthony, so many of us, I think we're walking around in this world and we don't know that we can change what we think. And we don't
Mhm.
know that by changing what we think, we can change our whole life. And this is where, for me, when we talk about dreaming big and recreating your life, that's where it begins. That really is what it's all about. People are talking
Mhm.
about manifestation and visualization. All that's well and good, but you can't get there if you don't get here. You got
Right.
to, it starts right here.
Yeah. Mindset mastery.
Yes.
Mind mastery architect, that comes first, right? Getting your mind right. And yes, and then you can transform the outside, but you have to start inside. Um,
Absolutely.
Bashir the other day, I heard him say, I think that's his name. I think it's Bashir. The other day he said, circumstances don't matter. Your state of being matters. And I thought that was powerful because you can take it literally, and circumstances really don't matter if you have mindset mastery, mind mastery architecture down, if and if you know how to um if you know how to manifest things. And so it doesn't matter, but then it also doesn't create matter. Circumstances don't create matter. State of
And
being creates matter. So yeah, I like that.
I think, it's like, I get so excited when I think about it. The circumstances that energetically, the circumstances that are occurring are circumstances that you are manifesting because of the vibrations that you are emitting. And all of this comes back to everything is energy, and you're vibing at a certain level, certain resonance, and you're attracting those things that are also vibing at that level. And if you want something different, here's the conscious living part, or the living consciously part. If you want something different, then you got to vibe at a different level. You got to
Yes.
raise your energy. And again, raising your energy is going to begin with, we always start with awareness.
Right.
You got to become aware of where you are in order to, and you have to have a sense of awareness about being aware.
Right. Right.
And then
Right.
you have to have a desire to do something different, because some people will have an awareness and they have no desire. They stay right where they are. And
Right.
then other people have an awareness and they have a desire. And at that point, anytime you become consciously aware of where you are in your life and how your life is unfolding, it presents a decision point.
Right.
And you can go to the left or to the right. You can do something or not. I say, if you choose not to do anything, I am perfectly okay with that. That is your right, because we are all here on our own unique path, and no one of us knows what the other one is here to experience and or to learn.
Mhm.
But that said, if that is the path you choose, don't inflict your pain on anybody else. That's the path you chose.
Right.
Now, on the other hand, if you find that you don't like the you that you're being, and you want to be someone different or to do something different, wow, what a beautiful place to be.
Right.
And it doesn't
Amen.
matter that you don't know. Now you do the research. Now you connect with the people who can support you. Now you begin to do something different. And that's how you manifest the life you want. Manifesting isn't about just thinking it, and it's not about just visualizing it. You got to do the work. You got to do the work. And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
work is always going to begin on the inside. Always.
Right. And I
That's
think there's a lot of people in this industry or in this space of spirituality that that haven't done the work or haven't done enough work yet. It seems like, and a lot of people look at it as toxic positivity or bypassing, if you will. But it's also very important to know that it's not easy. This work, it takes digging, and you're going to feel pain. You're going to feel these emotions, and it's important to feel those emotions. So what would you say to the client who wants to change but who's scared of the process?
You know, it sounds so trite to say, feel the fear and do it anyway, but that's what I'd say.
Right, right.
And what I also say to my client is, I would not encourage you to go anywhere that I have not been. And when you go, as you pass through the waters, I'm going to pass through them with you. When you're
Mhm,
down on the floor, I'm going to get down there with you.
mhm.
I'm not going to stay down there because I'm not going to allow you to stay down there. But there
Right,
is strength in going down to the bottom and climbing your way out. Because number one, when you do that, it here again, it's a mindset thing. You begin to know that no matter what life presents, I can do this. I
right.
don't know if people saw like Simone Biles last week, I
Hmm.
guess, in the Olympics. And as she's getting ready to do her routine, there was on Instagram, I saw just a clip of her and she's moving her mouth and she's saying, I can do this, I can do this, I can do
Right,
this. And so when you are going through the fire, you have to find the strength from somewhere. And
right.
that's when that's when the spirituality really becomes concrete for me because what do you believe? What do you believe? Do
Hmm.
if you believe that you're going to fail, you will. If you
Right,
believe that there is a creative force that has everything, that has created you, and that you have the
mhm,
capacity to do all things that you put your mind to, then you're going to do something different.
right,
But to a person who says, I'm afraid, I'm going to say this as well. I spent much of my life in fear, but in terms of the external awards and accomplishments, I did it anyway. Every degree. I remember getting my law school degree. I remember the first day of law school. I was so terrified. I was literally walking into walls. I was scared to death. I was there. I was a
right,
returning student with these young kids, right?
right, right.
And I was just getting questions about number one, that we there were six Black students who had come into the program before us in a school of at this point my class was 205 students, and so they
Mhm,
had three classes, so you had roughly 600 students in the school, and there were six Blacks who were already there before us, and we were the largest class that the law school had ever brought in. There were 18 of us, so you're talking what, 24 people, 26 people in a sea of whiteness.
mhm.
They changed this. The law school that I attended, Florida State University Law School, had initially been uh, developed, created for Florida A&M University, a Black university, historically Black college. They
Yeah.
took it from them and gave it to the white university
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
and named it after a known racist, B.K. Roberts. And so that was the environment that
Right.
we went into, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so
Felt hostile.
very hostile
Hmm.
when there was an expectation almost that we would not succeed.
Right,
So
right,
when you are in a situation like that, you got to have something within you that gets you up every day.
right,
It's like going to war. It's going to war. But that's why, again, when we have the little things that, oh my goodness, this went wrong, that went wrong, those things are simply training you for the big job.
right,
That's building your resilience.
right.
I tell the story. I love to tell stories. When my son was a baby, I loved watching him. I would just laugh because instead of him crawling forward, he scooted backward.
Right.
That is so funny. He's just scooting. I say, go forward, go forward. He's just scooting. But I'll tell you this, when he got ready to walk, he stood straight up and he
Mhm.
walked.
Yeah, right.
He never crawled forward.
Never
He
crawled.
mm-mm. And the lesson that I drew from that is he did that to strengthen his get up legs, his
Mhm.
get up muscles, and his
Mhm.
legs were strong and they were strong enough to hold him up. And so when we
Mhm.
go through these situations where we are afraid, yeah, feel the fear and do it anyway, because it is
Wow.
strengthening your resilience, your spiritual resilience muscle, so that when you are
Mm.
confronted with something else, now you know that you can deal with this because you've been there before.
Right.
When I got to my PhD program, I knew that I could do it because in terms of rigor, it was nothing compared to my law school program. It
Right.
was nothing.
Right.
Mind you, they thought they were all that and then some, but as compared to the rigor of law school, my PhD program, it was rigorous, but it was nothing. I had been there before. I'd been in the fire, so I knew I could do this. So the more experience, well, let me put it this way. If you feel comfortable in your space, you're not
Mhm.
growing.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a baby being
Mhm.
born has to put pressure on that birth canal in order to come into
Yeah.
being.
Right.
If you want to be recreated, rebirth, anything renewed, you've got to
Mhm.
put the pressure on yourself. You've got to feel the pressure in
Right.
order to, even a baby chick coming up out of the egg has to put pressure from the inside to crack it open.
Right. The thing
Begin.
that that your story about your son made me think about, crawling backwards or scooting himself backwards, but then those are the exact muscles that he needed in order to get up and walk. That's kind of like making every mistake in the book or making the mistakes that other people don't make.
Yeah,
You're becoming a master, and it's just going to take a little bit of time, and it may be a little bit painful, but at the end of the day, you'll be stronger for it and it'll be more successful because of it.
yeah, I
Right.
totally agree. I had a conversation, y'all. I talk to God all the time. He talks back to me. I'm intuitive. I'm clairaudient. I hear stuff. So I had a conversation with God, and I was not pleased. Mm. I'm pleased now, but I was a
Right,
difficult, it's a
right.
difficult for my mom. I was a difficult child for the Creator.
Mm.
Um, and I said to him, I don't understand why I had to go through all of this. And I thought back to the childhood, the poverty, the father. I was raped when I was 14, raped by my doctor. That went on for a while. Because I was afraid to tell, and every time I had to go to him for something, he's the only Black doctor,
Wow.
so that's where I'm
You go
going.
to them. Yeah. Mm.
So I I just there were so many things that had happened to me. My college boyfriend raped me, date rape, and just being married twice, divorced twice, physical abuse by my first husband, emotional abuse by my second husband. It was like, why did I have to do all of this? And then add to that the other things that I was dealing with professionally in terms of going into hostile environments and being on the cutting edge of change. It was a lot. It was a
Mm.
lot. And
Yeah.
there were the times I just said, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't understand why. Why am I having to experience all of this? But the answer that I got was this: so that you can deal with, and it wasn't deal with, relate to, so that you can relate to the highest of the high. That's why all of those degrees, and the lowest of the low,
Mm.
so that you can empathize and have compassion. And so that whatever a person's story is, you can be authentic and transparent because you have had, if not that story, you've had a similar story.
Right.
We all have stories to tell. We all have stories. And oftentimes, someone on the outside will look at you and they will just see the gloss. They
Mm.
don't understand what you've been through. Now,
Right.
again, I say, thank God I don't look like what I've been through. But at the same time, I say, God, that now I can appreciate it. I was speaking to a friend this morning and I said to her, I have no regrets. I have
Mhm.
no regrets. My life has been what it's been. And now I'm in a place of surrender. I don't, I'm happy, but I don't work, I don't crave the high highs of happiness, and I don't sink into the low lows. I just kind of stay in the middle. And that's where the joy is. And that was something that my spiritual mentor was trying
Mm,
to teach me. And initially I just didn't get it. I
you're
didn't get
right.
it because I wanted the chemical the chemical release that goes with the high high. And I
Mhm.
said, they sold me a bill of goods. It's just all a lie. This life is all a lie.
Right.
But then I had to ask myself, well, who really told you that? And no person told me. It was the story I told myself based on how I thought it was supposed to be. And so getting back to living consciously, and I like to say it both ways, living consciously and conscious living.
That's
Getting
right.
back to that, um, you have to be aware, I think, of what are the stories that you're telling yourself, because most of what you tell yourself, I think the research, I think the number is that at least 70% of what you're telling yourself did not happen. And
Right.
of the part that did happen, 50% of it didn't happen the way you're telling yourself that it happens. And every time you tell the story, you add a little bit of texture. And so pretty soon, the story of what did happen is nothing like the story that you are living. And you're actually living that. You're living
Right.
that. And getting back to the energy, you
Mhm.
know, at first I talked about, I was so excited to become a Reiki master and advanced pranic healer and a crystal healer and all of that. But God just brought me back to, it's all energy, and it's all divine energy. It's all divine
Right.
energy. And with that, I wanted to bring it back to energy because I just want people to understand that what you tell yourself is so important, and it releases, there are chemical releases, and it's all energy. And if you're not aware of that, then, and you don't process the energy throughout your body, it sticks, and wherever it is, it stops.
Mhm.
People have broken hearts because they were in relationships, or they had relationships with parents or others who were not kind to them, and they tell themselves, perhaps, my heart is broken. Now some of the quote unquote heart attacks actually come because of other physical things, but even that is energy. I've got a friend right now, I love her dearly. She's going through a medical situation with her heart. They've done all of these tests, and they found nothing wrong with her heart, but she has this, it's like her heart beats too fast.
Mm.
But when they've done a battery of tests, her heart is normal. And she said to me just a couple of days ago, she said, I think this all goes back to the relationship that I had with my partner. My heart was broken, and I told myself my heart was broken.
Right.
And so now I have a broken heart.
Mm.
Medically, they can't find anything wrong with it. But what she has to do is, metaphysically, she has to heal the brokenness of her heart.
Mhm.
Our words are so important. Our words are so important. So,
And when you say metaphysically, that means beyond the physical,
yeah,
using your mind, spirit, and energy.
yeah.
Yes, yes, definitely. And you are also an intuitive coach, an intuitive healer. I know that I've been focusing on learning to trust my intuition and to be okay with it and follow it and follow my heart. Just recently, I have a translation interpretation business, and recently I've gotten into providing potable water to folks that don't have it. And we're starting in Eastern Guinea with my brother-in-law, and I was just everything just happened synchronistically. Everything just kind of got put together, and I used my intuition. I mean, in order to manifest that. It wasn't the prettiest way that it was manifested, but it's here and it's solid and I'm happy that that I chose to go that way. How do you work with folks to foster their intuition, or and why do you feel that that is something very important for us?
I think that, we talk about prayer all the time, and we're taught to pray, but we are taught not to listen to our intuition. Intuition manifests itself in multiple ways. When cops talk about it, for instance, they may say, "I felt the hair stand up on the back of my neck," or "I just had a feeling that something wasn't right," or "I just knew it in my gut."
Yeah.
all of those, it's all energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you say, initially I was afraid to even talk about being clairaudient because I went to my pastor. This was many, many years ago, and didn't have anybody to talk to about as my gifts were beginning to show. I didn't have anybody to talk to about that. And I went to him and I said, how do you know when God is talking to you? It's because I hear voices. I hear a voice. It is the same voice every time, and it speaks in the same way. And no matter how I try to twist it up with my questions, I get the answer to the question even before I can formulate the question. And I said, and there was one time that I said to myself, that, I just made it up. And God said, you're just not that smart. you're you're very smart, but you're not so smart that you can make up the answer to the question before you even ask the question, because you don't know what question to ask. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. So what I tell my clients to begin, that the difference between prayer and intuition, in my opinion, prayer is when you're speaking and to God, however you speak to God.
Mhm.
And intuition is when you're listening, when God is speaking to you. And so I encourage them to make a divine appointment. We make appointments to go to the doctor. We make appointments for massages, to get our nails done, and hair
Mm.
appointments and all of that.
Mm. Yeah.
Make an appointment with your creator,
Yeah.
universe, source, whatever name you call him, her, it,
Mhm.
and sit there, and don't go with a barrage of questions. You can say, you identify one thing that you might want some insight about, and just
Mhm.
put that one thing before him. Write it out so that you can get out of your head. Just write it out you can even write it on a scrap of paper or a journal. Just
Mhm.
get it out of your head and just sit there. And people will say, "Oh, I can't sit still." Or, yes, you can. Yes, you can. You can do anything you put your mind to. So when you sit with it, I'll say, once you write it out, then you just ask that question one time. Typically, you will get an answer almost immediately. It will be
Mhm.
something, and then what you will do is say, "I made it up."
Right.
You'll say that's not right. I made it up. And so I say, well, what did you hear? How does God speak to you, and what did you hear? And the whole time you're in my program, my coaching program, I'm saying, stay in the ask. Don't assume. Ask for guidance, ask for direction,
Mhm.
ask in the little things and in the big things. What should I wear? What should I eat? What should I say? Who
Mhm.
should I who should I be with? When I'm driving my car, should I go out in the car today?
Right.
What street should I take? Should I turn to the left? Should I turn to the right?
Mhm.
Again, I'm a storyteller and I tell the stories about my life. One day I said, okay, God, I was leaving the bookstore. I was headed home. I was probably only about 6 blocks from my house. And there was a one road that I was on that was a straight shot, straight shot. And I said, okay, God, I got to the cross street. I'm approaching the cross street. And I said, should I turn to the left, turn to the right, or go straight? I heard, turn to the left, go 1 block, turn to the right. I will be home. I said, okay. So what did I do? I went straight. I went straight. As I am approaching the light on the straight street, a car comes out from the left, and there was a car that was, so I'm in the inside lane, and there's another car that's just ahead of me in the outside lane.
Right.
And the car that came on the cross street was coming down off the interstate, and it's collided with that other car. If
Oh
I had
wow.
been just a
On
few
that.
seconds faster, I
Mm.
would have been broadsided. I would not have
Wow.
survived that. So
Mm.
then I
Mm.
end up
Mm.
sitting there, um, sitting there about 3 hours while rescue did what they did. That was the last time I didn't follow directions. That was almost a deadly consequence. So I
Yeah.
asked, where should I go? What should I read? I'll go into the bookstore. I love books. I said that earlier. I love books. I'll go into a bookstore and I just take my hand and run it down the shelf. I go to the section I'm interested in, usually personal development or spirituality or something like that. I just run my hand down the shelf asking which book. And it's
Mhm.
like a book will fall off the shelf, or it will
Right.
like be out, or something to let me know this is the book. I've done that in Goodwill stores. I like to go there because you can get these expensive books and they're only a couple dollars.
I do the
So
same thing. Goodwill. Yeah.
oh, I remember one day, listen, don't judge me. I went to the bookstore, I went to the Goodwill. I spent like $150 on books. Do you know how many
Mm.
books that was?
That's a lot of books to Goodwill.
Don't judge me. I'm just saying, because it was like all of the books that I wanted that I was going to be buying anyway, one at a time from Barnes and Nobles or from Amazon, they were all there. Who could leave all those books there? I couldn't. $150 is like I walked out of that store and I thought that is so ridiculous. You can't even tell anybody what you just did.
That's
But
funny. Yeah, I do the same thing, but intuition works differently for different people. Sometimes you hear words, sometimes you get downloads of just like understanding. Other times you see stuff or you
yeah,
feel things, and then all of a sudden you understand and you know that that was something that wasn't that necessarily come from you, that it was guidance, if whether it be a higher self, whether it be God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, like you were saying earlier. But yeah, some people are more visual, some people are more feeling oriented. And yeah, yeah, it's an interesting thing.
sometimes it's just a knowing. It's like
Right.
I don't know how I know. I just know.
Mhm.
I just know. Um, with me again, I'm typically getting something. I get it in the right ear all the time. It never comes in the left. It always comes in the right. It I feel it like an energy coming up from my heart that changes into words that I understand.
Mm.
Um, I
Mhm.
know that it's always the same voice. At the same time, I get chills. I call it my spiritual knowingness. I get
Mhm.
chills on my body. My left foot will my toes will curl up. They're locked. When
Right.
I'm getting it, I cannot unlock them. I can't unlock them until I have received what I was supposed to receive, and then they just relax.
Mm. Wow.
So there are tell signs for each of us in terms of how we get that information. And I try to teach my clients to begin to like God has always spoken to you. Always. You just were not conscious that you were being spoken to. And when I say speaking and spoken, I put that in quotation marks because, again, how
Mhm.
God connects with you, how
Mhm.
Source connects with you is different. And sometimes you will hear it, and sometimes you won't. Sometimes you will just have a knowingness.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can see with your eyes open that things that other people can't see.
Mhm.
You have to just, that's why that divine appointment is so important, that you sit
Mhm.
with yourself and know and get to know yourself in that way, to know how does Source,
Mhm.
universe, spirit, how does it connect with me?
Right.
And once
Right.
you do, you begin to trust it. And yes, initially you will question, but go with your instinct. Go with your instinct, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to be right. It's going to be
Mhm.
right.
Mhm. So what excites you now? Is there anything coming up for you? Do you have a new offering, or any sort of um, any sort of program that's exciting you right now, or anything else that's really
Well,
got your attention?
I like doing one-on-one coaching. So my coaching program, Revision U, is always open. When I'm working with a single client, when I'm working with you individually, the
Mhm.
program is called Revision U Infinity, because
Mhm.
what I want you to do, what I work with you to do, is break beyond the limitations and see yourself as all of who you are. And
Right.
that's what we work for, toward one aspect at a time. But I also am, and I probably will start it next month. This is August, so September. I'm going to start doing a First Friday, and First Friday is just an opportunity to have conversations, spiritual-based conversations.
Mhm.
I will not be coaching in that. That's going to be a free offering, like one day a month, a free offering, just to come in, have conversations about spiritual based things. I like to take the questions and respond to them in a way that gives you food for thought. But
Mhm.
from a practical standpoint, I'm all about applying spirituality.
Right.
The esoteric spirituality, the theoretical stuff, that feeds my brain, but it doesn't do much if people understand it but can't apply it. So
Right.
I like to take the information and break it down and say, okay, so this is how it applies in your life, or this is how you can apply it.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons that I tell so many stories. That's one of the reasons that I've gone through so much stuff, that I tell stories so that you can see this is how it works when it works, and
Right.
this is what happens when it doesn't. But again, you always have the chance to do something new. That
Right.
was the big learning point for me, that you always have to do something new. So, and I will have a webinar, and it will be a free webinar coming up in 6 weeks. We're doing the marketing for it right now. Again, it's Revision You Unlimited, which is my the entry level coaching program, where I connect with you and we go through those first stages that I was talking about, reflecting on who you are, reimagining who you want to be, and working to remove the barriers and the limitations. It's a lot of mindset works, because so many times we speak and we're not conscious of what we're saying.
Right.
Like I like to remind people, we use the two words I am all the time. I am this and I am that. That is so creative. You're using the name of God. Remember, I said, God said, any of these things that Jesus, these things that I do, you can do more. And so every time you say I am, you're calling upon that power. You're
Hmm.
calling upon that divine authority to create. And the thing that you create, whatever comes after the I am, is what you're creating.
Right.
I'm mad, and you can just feel yourself getting angrier. I'm sad, and you feel yourself just kind of wilting. I'm
Hmm.
happy, and you feel yourself feeling bigger. And whatever you say that comes after I am, that's what you're creating. And so I want you to be mindful of your words. You know, the one of my favorite books is The Four Agreements, which
Oh
talks
yeah.
about be impeccable with your word.
Be
Be
impeccable with your
mindful
word.
of your word.
Yes, definitely. That's great. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Thanks for being on my show, the Thrive Show. All your details will be under this video here on YouTube. So if you want to get a hold of Dr. Sue Collins at any time, go ahead and do so. I got one more question for you. So how does your work, how will it change the world?
Oh, so glad you asked. I see, at the risk of sounding conceited, which I'm not, I'm a master, but I am a master whose gift is to work with other masters. And so the people that I work with are those people who believe that they have been called to make a greater difference in the world. I do the work to help them achieve their highest potential. By them, I pour into them, they pour into the world, which is uplifting the consciousness, and which is connecting. I believe that our purpose, our individual purpose in being here, the sole purpose is to love ourselves, learn to love ourselves. That's why we have to do that deep inner work.
Right.
And then when we love ourselves, we can love others. I can't give you what I don't have. And so I work with these masters to connect with themselves, to rid themselves of the limitations and limiting beliefs so that they can connect with the divine and have something to give.
Folks, Dr. Sue Collins, the coach's coach. All right. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.